Hello and welcome to another video. A few weeks ago a video was made by Alex Anders on their YouTube channel BisexualRealTalk, talking about asexuality and the ace spectrum. The video is titled Asexual versus Demisexual versus Bisexual, and the premise of the video is that a listener to their podcast submitted a kind of a question or a call for advice because they had found the term demisexual and wasn't sure whether you could be bisexual and demisexual at the same time. As of the time of recording, this video has been getting a lot of flack, especially by the ace community on Twitter. This has been, from my perspective, it seems like it's being spearheaded by Gentle Giant Ace. And the reason it's getting a lot of flack is because there are many misconceptions in this video which could be misconstrued as true by people who don't know much about the ace community. And because there isn't much information about the ace community out there, this video could be some people's first introduction to it, and you don't want the first introduction to asexuality and the ace community to be in the form of misinformation. Now, before we get into it, and I will be talking about certain things that were said in the video and why they were wrong, why they are misconceptions. This isn't meant to be an attack on Alex Anders or his channel, and I don't want anyone thinking that I have something against him. I prefer to assume the best of people, and in this instance I'm assuming that they weren't very well informed about asexuality, and they wanted to help this person, but they misunderstood something and therefore gave misinformation. And I hope by making this video I can help anyone who was confused by that original video and heard the misinformation and help to educate people about what the asexuality is and what the ace spectrum is. And if Alex does watch this video, then I hope he doesn't take this negatively. I am just trying to help. And I hope that if you do watch this video, then you can learn something, and the next time someone comes to you asking about asexuality in the ace community, you will have a better grasp of all the terms within. But without further ado, let's get started.
Is it possible to be demi and bi at the same time? I started dating my husband in high school, so I really have nothing to compare my sexuality to other than him. Growing up, I really only heard the term straight and gay. Knowing I found boys attractive, my assumption was that I was simply straight. I found many boys, girls, and basically bodies in general attractive. I like the thought of sex. I, however, am now learning that actually having sex for me must be with a person I am extremely comfortable with. I feel like kissing a woman I don't know would also be like kissing a man I don't know, just uncomfortable. Do demisexual and bisexual fit under the same label, or are they completely different things?
Before we get into Alex's response to the letter that was submitted, I just want to give my take on it and how I would approach responding to that. So the person was obviously had some form of attraction to both men and women, and they were quite confident from the sounds of it that that's the case, but they were gravitating towards demisexuality because they didn't really like the idea of kissing someone or having sex with someone, hooking up with someone, unless they had a strong bond with them. And to me that sounds very much like demisexuality. Demisexuality being defined as not feeling sexual attraction until you have a strong emotional bond with someone. So that lines up pretty well, and I'd probably say that yes, from my perspective, if you want to identify as demisexual, that's perfectly valid. That sounds like it fits you quite well. And as for whether bisexuality and demisexuality can coexist, yes, they can. I guess demisexuality more defines like how you feel the attraction, under what circumstances, whereas bisexuality defines whom you're feeling the attraction towards. So of course you can be bi and demisexual. That just means your attraction, which is triggered by having a strong emotional bond, can be directed towards more than one gender. And another thing I would have brought up when replying to this question would be the split attraction model. The split attraction model aims to split the broad topic of attraction into different types. For example, the two main ones being romantic and sexual attraction. And I think this might be very useful for someone questioning, because they could then kind of digest their attraction and see whether, oh, am I demi and bi, or am I maybe biromantic and demisexual, or all these different things that could help them kind of come to terms with their own orientation. But yes, with that out of the way, let's see some of Alex's comments on the matter.
Demisexual is when your sexual desire only comes after getting to know someone better. So you don't feel a sexual desire until you create a connection with them. That's what demisexual means.
Just that there is one slight issue with his initial definition of demisexuality, and this issue is repeated throughout the video. He is defining it as sexual desire after an emotional bond is formed. Sexual attraction and sexual desire are different things. So sexual attraction is an innate drive to want to have like sex or do sexual things with a particular gender, whereas a sex drive or a libido is your drive to do it, which doesn't have a direction. So I think the best way that I can describe it as someone who has a maths background in my education is that your sex drive is the magnitude, and your attraction is who it's directed towards. So it's perfectly possible for someone who identifies as asexual, who doesn't have any sexual attraction, to still have a sex drive and still have a libido. It just won't be directed towards anyone. In that case, maybe they will satisfy their sex drive by masturbating or by watching porn. This may not be the case, but in some cases it is. So this distinction between sexual desire and sexual attraction is very important.
And asexual is when you have a limited sexual attraction or sexual desire, or zero sexual attraction or desire.
And we see here he's using the terms, when he's defining asexual, attraction and desire synonymously. As I just mentioned, they are different terms, they do mean different things, but I can understand where that confusion came from.
Another term that people use would be gray sexual. So gray sexual and asexual are essentially the exact same thing. One tends to be a more scientific word, like words that scientists use, which is asexual, and gray sexual is simply an identity.
Okay, so here he is saying that gray sexual or gray asexual, in other words, and asexual are the same thing, but they're used in different contexts. Now, I'm not 100% sure where he's got this idea from. Asexuality as an orientation on its own is defined by a lack of sexual attraction towards people of any gender. However, there is a spectrum of sexualities between asexuality and allosexuality. Allosexuality just meaning not on the asexual spectrum. And a gray sexual or gray asexual is an identity, is an orientation that you can use if you fit somewhere on this spectrum. It's also sometimes defined more specifically in saying that you feel sexual attraction but only in certain circumstances, or only very occasionally. So grey asexuality is somewhere on the spectrum between asexuality and allosexuality, whereas asexuality as an orientation is the one right at the asexual end. And I think he's alluding to the fact that asexual can also be used in scientific context to mean that there is they can reproduce asexually. They don't need to use sexual intercourse to reproduce. Obviously, this is completely different to the orientation. In fact, even though the words sound and look the same, this idea that they are the same word is ridiculous, and in fact it's so common in language that there is a word for it, a homonym. A homonym is just two words that look and sound the same but mean different things. And asexual, the orientation, is a completely different word to asexual, the biological term to do about not sexually reproducing to produce offspring.
Asexual, gray sexual, demisexual, they all look at quantity and quality and when you have sexual desire, how much sexual desire you have. That would be different from sexual orientations like bisexual or homosexual or heterosexual. Those words look at your focus, the focus of your sexual desire.
I do understand where he's coming from this point, and it is something that I have expressed in the past. I think it is useful to consider asexuality and the ace spectrum in a different light to bisexuality, homosexuality, and heterosexuality. They are all orientations, they are all completely valid sexual orientations, but the ace spectrum kind of deals with, as he said, the strength or the nature of your attraction, whereas bisexuality, homosexuality, pansexuality, etc., deal with the direction of it. And I think it is useful in a lot of cases for a lot of people to use these both simultaneously to describe your sexual orientation. So this is obviously good that he's mentioned that you use these terms simultaneously. Like I just said, that's very valuable for a lot of people. But if I were to do this topic, I would also mention in this same vein the split attraction model. For example, I identify as homoromantic asexual, which means I'm romantically attracted to other men, but sexually attracted to no one. And I think this might be something that could be useful to the person who submitted the letter, because maybe they hadn't considered that attraction doesn't have to be sexual. So this might be helpful for them to be able to split them into separate forms of attraction.
Now keep in mind that there's sexual identity and there's sexual orientation. Sexual identity is a name, a word that you can make up if you wanted to. You could call yourself a pillowsexual if you wanted to. That can then create some sort of definition towards that.
Okay, and this is the problem. This is I think the main issue with the video, where he's talking about sexual identity and sexual orientation. To be honest, I've never personally heard a distinction between those two terms. I identify as my sexual orientation. But that's just how I understand it. Maybe I'm misinformed. The thing that really annoys me about this bit in the video is that he says the whole ace spectrum is what he calls sexual identities. And what these sexual identities are in his mind are made up labels that have really no basis, and you can just on a whim create a label for yourself. And the example he uses is pillowsexual. Now, I have no idea where he got this pillowsexual for, comparing the whole ace spectrum to some flippant, on-the-spot, ridiculous-sounding identity, as he put it, is really harmful. And it is directly aphobic. And I think this is the one point in the video where I can confidently say that he is directly aphobic. Asexuality and the ace spectrum are valid sexual orientations, the same as any other orientation. Hello, Editing Daniel here to just explicitly say that demisexuality and grey asexuality are 100% valid too. I realised I didn't say that explicitly in the video, so I just wanted to add that on. Now we can get back to it. And I think the problem with this is that he's just making it out that asexuality and the ace spectrum aren't real, and that he's saying that it's just something people use, even though there's something else. So, for example, to me, this says that he would call me gay, just homosexual, but I'm using the word asexual because I want to, which obviously isn't the case. I am asexual. I identify as asexual. It's an inherent part of me, the same way that my homoromanticism is. It's not something I just made up and decided, yes, I will use this word to describe myself for no apparent reason because I want to. That's not the case. asexuality, aspectrum, as valid as any other orientations.
So there are people who use asexual as an identity. And that is completely different from a sexual orientation, whereas a sexual orientation is more the objective looking at something and what, to determine what they are. And that's homosexual, heterosexual, and bisexual.
As he's making clear here, he thinks that the only orientations are heterosexuality, homosexuality, and bisexuality. And everyone fits into one of these three orientations, and that some people then, on top of that, decide that they want to use another label, and it's not real, it's just made up, it's completely fictional, and they just make up a definition for this thing. This is obviously not the case. Asexuality is real, the aspectrum is real, it is as valid an orientation as all the others that he mentioned. I don't really know what to say on that point besides that.
Can you use demi and bi both being identities as opposed to sexual orientations or scientific words? Yeah, you can. You can make up anything you want.
And he keeps on throwing this word scientifically around, saying that gay, straight, and bi are scientifically your orientations, whereas asexual is just a made-up word, which is really invalidating a ton of people's orientations, because if someone identifies a certain way, you should respect that. And there is a huge community of asexual people who face tons of discrimination because of their orientation from within and outside the LGBT plus community. And by saying that their orientations are invalid because you think that the only things possible are straight, gay, and bi, it's just unnecessary. So yeah, that's all the things that I wanted to cover in this video. It probably went on for a long while. I am sorry about that. I hope that I made my point clear and that everything I said helped clarify some things about asexuality and the aspectrum and correct some of the misinformation that he was giving in this video. Once again, I have no problem with this person. I will always assume the best of people, and I hope that once he realizes that he made a mistake and that he misrepresented the ace community, that he will correct himself and in the future know better how to approach the topic of asexuality and the ace spectrum. And as always, if you do want to talk about the ace spectrum or asexuality, the best thing you can do is to talk to someone who identifies as asexual or somewhere else on the ace spectrum, depending on what you want to talk about. And there are plenty of people like myself who are willing to talk about that with you. But yeah, I don't tend to like doing videos like these, but I thought that it was important for anyone who did see this video and who was misinformed by it to get the proper information out there and to correct the mistakes that he made in the video. If you have any other comments about this, then please leave them in the comments below. Yes, otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like. I post videos every Saturday, so if you want to see more, then feel free to subscribe. That is all I had to say today. Have a wonderful day, and I shall see you next time.